Okay, this week at The Agenda asked if our best inventive days were behind us, saw gaming used as a learning tool, and university students who grade themselves. The Agenda's Week in Review begins with fun and games in the classroom. To those who have embraced 21st century literacy, the new coin of serious learning are games. Games that engage today's students in a way that books and blackboards no longer can. To help us understand the trend towards gamification in general and in education in particular, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, here is Gabe Zickerman. He's co-author of the forthcoming book, Gamification Revolution. Gabe, it's good of you to join us on the line from Philly. How you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I want to start by quoting you to you. Had Shakespeare been alive today, he would not have written all the world's a stage. You say he'd have written all the world's a game. Why a game?
Well, games are just better systems for understanding the complexity of the world and how things interact with each other. In our previous concept of how we might communicate, especially as it relates to the classroom, we thought that the measure of understanding, the measure of success, was how well people could parrot back what they had heard, how well they retained knowledge. But today, all knowledge is available to everybody, completely free, absolutely accessible on your smartphone or your computer at any time you need it. And so knowledge becomes less the currency of the realm, and now it's more important to be a good systems thinker, to be great on your feet, to be able to understand how things relate to each other, and to understand systems in their entirety. We call that capability fluid intelligence, and that is a thing that games teach and help us explore in a way that no other form of medium has ever been able to do.
Fluid intelligence being opposite from what?
Crystallized intelligence. So crystallized intelligence is the normal thing we measure on things like IQ tests or memory tests. And fluid intelligence, which is represented as GF, is our ability to think on our feet and reason our way out of situations that are unfamiliar to us. And that's really the 21st century kind of intelligence that's going to be super important.
Okay, give us an example of how gamification revolutionizes the world around us, motivates staff, engages customers, that kind of thing.
Well, there's a whole bunch of examples of gamification at work that are pretty exciting, but one of my favorites is a thing called Speed Camera Lottery, and it was a design put forward in Stockholm, Sweden, where those speeding cameras that typically take your picture and send you a ticket actually work a little bit differently. Your tickets are based on how much money you make rather than on how fast you're going, so you can earn a colossal ticket. And the way that Speed Camera Lottery works, which was a design competition won by a guy named Kevin Richardson, is instead of passing by the speeding camera and getting this big ticket in the mail, anyone who passes by the speed camera at or below the speed limit is automatically entered into a lottery to split the proceeds of the people who speed. So you earn a little like lottery ticket every time you comply with the law, but if you break the law, you get a punishment. And this idea of constant positive reinforcement, this idea of constantly bringing a little bit of fun, a little bit of surprise and delight, feedback, friends, and fun, as we call it in gamification, has had a transformative effect on speeding in Sweden. It's lowered speeding by 20 kilometers an hour on average using this technique. The same basic principle applies to any difficult to change behavior, like getting kids to learn, like getting employees to be engaged, or getting customers to pay attention in this increasingly distracting world.
Is that anywhere in North America that you know of, the speeding, the incentive not to speed?
No, we haven't seen that implemented in North America, but we have lots of other great examples of kind of difficult behavior changes that have been really super successful in North America. And probably most folks are familiar with a product called Nike Plus, which is a little hardware and software product from Nike that you use when you're running or exercising. And now about 5 million people use Nike Plus to track all of their activities, to see how they're performing, to improve their physical fitness. It's transformed, the company, it's transformed what it means to be an athletics company, and also helped all these folks, achieve various fitness and activity goals. Critical to that is using the basic principles of games, feedback, friends, and fun, to make the system engaging.
Is it important to distinguish between the gamification that you're talking about and, say, game-based education, which of course would deal more with younger people?
Well, one of my kind of constant themes in talking about gamification in ed or game-based education, either way you want to put it, is that often folks are looking to find ways to replace teachers with games, but I think that's incredibly misguided. I think what we really need to be doing is thinking about ways to replace the pedagogical tools books and videos and exams with games because they're significantly more effective at teaching in that context. The Kauffman Foundation just did a little bit of research that showed that a game can increase test scores by about 100% in a classroom setting, whereas the best possible lecture can only achieve a 17% increase in test scores. Setting aside the question of whether or not those tests are accurate, the bottom line is the pairing of great gamification with great teaching is the ultimate solution to our question about how to scale education for the 21st century. It's not about replacing teachers with games, and that's kind of big concern of mine.
Sure. Let's remind everybody that you are in Philadelphia, but you actually live in New York, but you're one of us, right? You're from Toronto, Ontario originally, and spent something like, I'm told, 8,000 to 10,000 hours when you were living here as a kid playing the game Civilization. And you learned a lot about history, I gather, by doing that. And my question is, how different would your knowledge about history be if instead of taking those 8,000 to 10,000 hours playing a game to learn about history, you just hit the books instead?
Well, I'll tell you, I went to University of Waterloo as an undergraduate, and part of my graduate study there was the study of gifted children and their social emotional affect. And it was an extraordinary time. And while I was doing that work, I also played this game Civilization that you know of. And I want to relate a little story to you from Civilization that helps illustrate the difference between book learning and game learning. So in the game Civilization, where you compete as a kind of country, you can develop different military technologies, and one of the technologies you can develop is nuclear war. So you've been playing this game for a while, and you've been competing with computers or other people, and at some point you develop the technology to launch nuclear war against your competitors. And in that moment, of course, what you do is you launch a nuclear attack against some enemy that's been bugging you for the whole game. And when that happens, I'll tell you what happens in the game. When you launch that nuclear warhead, the first thing that happens if you have a democracy or republic is your Senate stops you from doing it. So in order to launch the attack, you have to become an autocracy or a communist government or military dictatorship. And then you go ahead and you launch the attack anyway. And when you do, you devastate your opponent, right? You devastate the city, your armies march right in. But it turns out that a few things happen. One, the whole world declares war against you immediately. So even your longstanding allies go to war against you. Two, the people in the city are restive and they will not become part of your civilization very easily. And three, the pollution that you create is extraordinarily difficult to clean up. Now, let me ask you this question. What lesson did the designer of that game, a guy named Sid Meier, want to teach me about nuclear war? And what didn't he do, which is more interesting than what he did do? He didn't throw up a box at any point that said, hey, wait a minute, don't launch nuclear war, it's terrible, nukes are bad, they're going to ruin the world, don't do it. He didn't do that at all. He let you do it. And in the process, as you destroyed the things that you built, as you ruined relationships, you learned an incredible amount about cause and effect, about the relationship between systems in the world, and what happens when you make certain choices. That's something that in book learning, we only get kind of in retrospect, right? We get that as a fact. But in the game setting, it allows you to pull all these different levers and see how complicated things interact. I'd posit that there's no book lesson, no video on Hiroshima or Nagasaki and the terrible things that happened there that could convey as appropriately the cause and effect levers for something like nuclear war. And so I'd say it's not a replacement for books, but I would say it's an absolute necessity to underline some of that factual learning with this kind of systems learning that games provide.
I do want to play some tape off the top. This is you from the 2010 Best Lecturer competition, showing everybody what it is that you do. Roll tape, please.
So students in our class originally submit an assignment, as they would in many other cases, but then they log back onto the system. And what we're showing you here is when they do so, they see their assignment up top, and then they see below that 6 anonymously presented assignments written by their peers. And so what we ask them to do is to read through those, kind of think of which one they feel is better than another, so rank order them in their mind, and then translate that into both a rating of the quality of the piece, something positive about the piece, and something that could have been done better.
Dwayne Perry, your
Yes.
partner in crime in this thing.
Yes.
How long were you guys working on Peer Scholar?
We have been working with it for close to 10 years now. When he first worked with me as an undergraduate, this is when I had inherited the class, and he heard me gripe many times about wanting to get writing into the class. And it was, I think, literally, we have trouble recreating the past, but I think it was actually his idea to try to create a system that harnessed peer assessment and self-assessment. We also asked students to assess themselves. But he thought we could create a system that would do this, that would work with very large numbers, and we set about doing that, and that became his PhD thesis. So it was really a kind of a nice triangulation whereby we were building this, doing research on it to ensure that it really did do the things we expected it to do, honing it along the way, and so we end up both with a PhD thesis for him, a lot of publications and presentations, but also now a product that's having a pretty large impact.
And you see the things you expected it to do. What did you expect it to do?
Well, a lot of those are tied to what most educators would now call learning outcomes, and specifically, of course, we want to teach students knowledge. So in my introductory psychology class, I want to teach them the important figures, the phenomenon, the experiments, all that kind of stuff. But in addition to that, we really also want to teach our students skills. And you teach skills in a very different way. So skills like critical thinking, creative thinking, self-reflective thought, the ability to analyze our own work and see the flaws in it.
Which multiple choice really wouldn't cover, would it?
No, multiple. You can do some great things with multiple choice in terms of assessing understanding at a deep level, but it's always focused on content. But a skill like just writing or communicating effectively, that's only learned through repeated effective practice. And that's been the challenge in a very large lecture hall. In a small lecture hall, you can keep asking students to do things and you have 5 or 6 papers to grade. But when it's 1,900, then suddenly the stresses make that difficult. And so this was our way of trying to give students those skills, strengthen them in that context so that when they leave and they're around a boardroom or around their family, I sometimes say, I'm teaching you how to argue with your future daughter. Well, because you will need to know how to do that. It's just general life skills. And I think that's as an important a role for university as the content. We would really like, hence the name Scholar, we would like our students to graduate as scholars. So they both have the information, but they also have the skills to use it well.
And how many classes at U of T are using Peer Scholar now?
Now it's well over 20 and growing because
Is this 20 at Scarborough only, or?
No, across the campus.
Across the U of T.
Across
Okay.
U of T, and it really ranges from things like we're training medical residents. It's being used to train medical residents. It's being used in sociology, psychology, astrophysics. So really across the board, which is the other heartening thing for us, because Peer Scholar really structures a process, but it's what we sometimes call content agnostic. So, what students are actually thinking about and what topic area they're in is free to vary, and that's what's really nice, because they can learn critical thinking in the context of psychology, but then go on to a very different kind of class, but be employing those same skills in now a new, slightly different context. And that's a really good way for them to generalize those skills.
You're in Centennial College too?
We are, yeah. There's a really interesting example in Centennial College. The ambulance, the people they train to be ambulance workers, part of their training is to do a cultural awareness project whereby they pick some culture in Toronto. And the goal is to say, well, if you were going into a home that was of that culture, what should you know about that culture in order to have a respectful, efficient interaction? So, if a father is having some trauma, you don't want to be offending the people around you. You want to be able to do what you have to do. So in the past, students would pick one culture and learn about it, talk about it, write some sort of composition. Now they still do that, but now they help assess 4 or 5 or 6 of their peers' work. And in so doing, they learn about 4 or 5 or 6 different cultures. So it really kind of broadens as well the learning that's going on.
The steam engine was invented in 1780. The personal computer as a sort of everyday household product, 1980s. People like Tyler Cowen think it's unlikely that we're ever going to see inventions capable of transforming our world like those ever again. Is he right?
Well, let's wait 200 years before we declare innovation over. I think he is right that we're not seeing the kind of dramatic deployment of breakthrough technologies comparable to, say, the jet engine in the 1950s or the personal computer in the 1980s. But technologies have a life cycle like people. There are infants, then there are adolescents, and finally there are mature technologies. I think we're in a period where a lot of the technologies associated with the information revolution are reaching maturity, while in the laboratory we're continuing to see some very promising breakthroughs in everything from materials like graphene to research in supercomputing.
Armin, one of the things we hear is that because of the Great Recession, we're in the midst of a period of great economic stagnation, which is harming our ability to innovate. You buying that?
I think there is huge amounts of innovation that is just under the surface when it comes to nanotechnology, when it comes to things like 3D printing, artificial intelligence and robots, this thing that they call remote telepresence, which is permitting us to do all sorts of things from healthcare to mining to waging war from a distance as if you're doing it through a screen. These things have not really fully come on screen, and there's a brilliant TED Talk that was posted in 2008 by Kevin Kelly, who is a co-founder of Wired magazine, who talked about the next 5,000 days of the web. The web had only been around for 5,000 days at that point. And when you watch that today, so many of the things he's talked about the embedding of technology into our everyday life has come true. I think we haven't begun to see the floraison, the blossoming of what we know how to do, and biomimicry also.
So, Pina, the rumors of innovation's demise are vastly overrated?
Completely, and I could not agree more with Armin and Michael. I mean, I teach this stuff, and I alone can't keep up with the new technologies. I start every class by just scoping the landscape to see all the new inventions that came up just in the past week. And so, just to give you an example, Michael was talking about maturities of industries. Here in Canada, we can have a homegrown industry with stem cells. I mean, stem cells were discovered in Canada in the 1960s, and now we're at a stage where in Japan in 2006, there was a big discovery with induced pluripotent stem cells, which was basically taking your own skin, programming it, and putting it back to a stem cell state where you could then have any number of cells, from heart cells that could become a heart, to lung cells, a lung, et cetera, et cetera. So
and we're among the world leaders at this.
We are. So I think the best is yet to come.
Who said that?
Frank Sinatra.
Sinatra saying it, Tony Bennett saying it
Smart
again.
guy.
Yeah, indeed. Where are you coming from on this?
Well, I'd like to disagree, but I can't. I have anecdote. Of course, I see, this is what I do all day long, see new technologies, and I do believe that we have to distinguish between the conceptual invention of the foundational science and the application of it. There is a lag time, and we do see that there are peaks and troughs where there's a rapid increase in the application of the technology. We may be in a period now where we're really doing more foundational work, which will then result in a rapid growth at some point in the future. All of the things that Armin mentioned, material science, nanotechnology, 3D printing, biotechnology, biomimicking of using biological machines to replace silicon chips, stem cells, personalized medicine, our understanding of the genetic code and of the human body. All of these things promise to have tremendous breakthroughs. Now, are they going to be as good as indoor plumbing? Well, I happen to like indoor plumbing, so maybe not. And maybe many of the one could argue, as the economist does, that the low-hanging fruit, we've already picked the low-hanging fruit. But I'm not so sure that Edison or that Watt or that these people thought that this was low-hanging fruit. I mean, I think at the time when they made the telegraph, the telephone, the steam engine, these things were not things that were low-hanging for them. They were things that they hadn't...
it was miraculous.
They really were miraculous. Yeah. So the things that are miraculous, we can't actually really truly envision right now, I think. So. I can't deny that the economists' arguments about the slowing down of our GDP growth, that is something that is happening, it appears.
Well, let me follow up with Armin on that, because I do want to do a bit of a comparison between the economy as it exists today and say, let's just, pulling out of a hat, the 1970s, for example. When you look at the differences between the economy then of 40 or 50 years ago and today, what jumps out at you?
The growing concentration of ownership and consequently of income. So inequality and climate change and inequality are those two kind of inescapable and inconvenient truths of our era. And what we do know about the effect of the biggest global crisis that we've seen since the 1930s is in its wake came a wave of continuing a wave of corporate concentration that is further concentrating the ownership of lots of things, including intellectual property. And of course, we had that massive fight in the United States to stop online piracy. And that is the fight of our era. Also, the channeling of the intellectual commons will either slow or accelerate how we expand our understanding and take advantage of these innovation breakthroughs and how we apply them.
That's the key. I want to follow up with Michael Lind on that. Given the way Armin has described the differences between the economy of 40 or 50 years ago and today, does that stifle the kind of innovation that we need to keep progressing as a society in the way that we have?
Well, not necessarily. I would push back a little bit. In industries where you have increasing returns to scale or network effects, like a lot of telecommunications industries, some manufacturing, you naturally get a shakeout over time and you get a consolidation of a few oligopolistic or monopolistic firms in that sector. You may want to regulate them, but there are natural economies of scale that you can exploit. I think the real danger is that we have kind of a two-speed economy where new technologies, including those associated with advanced manufacturing like rapid prototyping, are being applied to the physical goods sector, to the traded manufacturing sector. Where we're lagging behind is in the application of productivity to healthcare, to higher education, to a lot of services. And so one of the challenges will be, because at least in the United States, more than 85% of people work in the domestic service sector now. Applying technology to these kind of backward services will lead to a lot of productivity gains that we have not yet enjoyed.
We've now arrived at a point where technology begins to threaten return on capital, mostly by causing the sort of abundance that depresses prices to the point where many goods have no choice but to become free. This is related to the amount of, quote, free working hours now being pumped into the economy, the result of crowdsourcing and rising productivity levels, thanks in part to the sort of gadgets that allow everyone to work anywhere and anytime, in a work environment that's generally speeding up as everyone tries to keep up with the competition by doing yet more hours voluntarily. Okay, Armin, this is right in your wheelhouse. What does all this mean?
So 3 things. First of all, the balance between capital and labor will continue to shift. We know that in all of the advanced industrialized countries, more and more of the fruit of the economic product has been flowing to capital, people that own technology, people that own venture capital. And that's going to continue to shift. Within the wage bundle, there will be more inequality. So the people that do have jobs will find themselves paid better as the wave of baby boomers finally gets out of the way, and the jobs that remain that haven't been automated are good jobs and well-paying jobs and in high demand. On the other side of that are the low-skilled people whose routine, either mental processes or physical processes become automated. So you've got machines, robots, artificial intelligence doing stuff that is totally mechanized, totally routine, or that can be done on the other side of the world with much cheaper labor, and it's as if they're virtual, as if they're here in the same room. So you're going to see more inequality. You're going to see more of the fruit of our economic activity flowing to owners of capital. And then the third thing is going to be this kind of micro jobs. Right. So you might be employed and you're constantly looking for work, which means you're going to work for less. You're competing with everybody. I just did something with a group of people about the next generation of employment for, Generation Next, and how the typical 25-year-old today has had about 24 jobs by the time they reach 25. And in about 5 years, 10 years, they're predicting they will have worked 250 micro jobs, projects by the time they're 25.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety on our website. That's theagenda.tvo.org, on our iTunes channel, or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/theagenda.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.